Brilliant. Okay. Right, so I'll start off with looking at a workbook. I've seen your responses now, so quite a few of you know about workbooks and worksheets, but I'll just refresh it for you. When you open Excel, you're actually opening a workbook, which can contain a number of worksheets, and that's these tabs at the bottom you can see down here. Okay, to add a new tab or a new worksheet, you right click in there and click insert, and it'll generate a new one. You can also rename them in here. You can drag them to new locations. You can change the color of them. You can also move or copy them. So if you want to duplicate, just use copy. Can be quite handy. If we look at the top of the screen, there's a number of menu items, and each menu has got its own ribbon. That's this area along the top. You'll notice in the ribbons, sometimes there's a little arrow in the bottom right-hand corner. If you click on these, it opens up another menu and gives you a lot more options. Okay, so that's worth exploring. So that's the main layout of the spreadsheets. So if we just dip into data types now, hopefully you all know what data types are. We'll see what, well, a lot of you don't. Okay, so in a spreadsheet, you can have text, numbers, and formulas. If you type in text into a cell, a lot of you will probably just type straight into the cell. However, that doesn't always work, especially if you're using numbers. So if you use an apostrophe before you type the text, it tells Excel that that is text and to treat it as text. Numbers are pretty straightforward. You just type numbers into a cell and it'll recognize them as numbers. If you're entering formulas, they always start with an equals. So as soon as we type equals, Excel is expecting us to type a formula. So it might be A1 plus A2. Okay, as there's no values in there, it goes to true false. Another important thing in Excel is order of calculation. This will throw you back to your school days. There we go. BODMAS. If you remember BODMAS when you were at school, when you were doing maths. So 8 plus 2 times 5, what do we think the answer is? Any suggestions? There we go. Michelle says it's 50. So you've done the calculation from left to right. That isn't quite how Excel does it. If I just type that in, equals 8 plus 2 times 5, and Excel thinks it's 18.
I don't know that one.
That's because it's used this order of calculation. So when Excel is working things out, it'll do the calculation in the brackets first, then it'll do the powers, divide, multiply, add, and subtract. So if we want this to give us 50, we would have to put brackets around the 8 plus 2 to make it do that first. So that's higher up in the hierarchy of BODMAS. And then the answer changes to 50. Does that make sense? You can comment in chat.
Yes.
Yeah, or turn your microphone on if you like now. There's not too many of you in here, so Might not get too confusing. Okay, it's just to bear in mind when you're entering formulas into Excel, it's going to use that method of calculation, so you might not always get the result you expect. Okay, if we move on to importing, it looks like a lot of you haven't done importing. So if you want to import from another data source, usually it's something like a comma separated values file that you've got of a lot of data that you want to bring into Excel. You can go to the data tab, and in the top right you can see you've got data. You can get it from the web, you can get it from a range, you can get it from text or comma separated values. So as an example, if I click on comma separated values, I've got some random text here in a CSV file, press import. Excel reads that file, and there it is. That's the data that's in the file, and the delimiter is a comma. You can change that if it's something else, if you've got spaces or tabs. Down at the bottom though, we've got a transform data button. We'll just press that and it'll load another screen, and we get a menu this time. Same data, but now you can manipulate this data before you bring it into Excel. There's quite a lot of options on there. One of the most common ones will be to use the top row as headers. So use first row as headers. If I click that, that first row becomes headers. I can then press close and load, and that will appear in my worksheet, and the headers are at the top there. Is that okay? Everybody use that? Any questions at all? You see it's put it on a new worksheet for us as well, called it sheet 1. Okay, next. Cut, copy and paste. Sounds quite simple, and most of you say that you're quite confident with that. What I'll do is just, again in chat, I'll just share a Word document with you. Let me just find it. Where is it? Paste types. If you'd like to grab that from chat, that's just a list of different paste types, and I'll just go through them with you. Obviously, if you want to cut, it literally cuts something and moves it to somewhere else. Just undo that. If you're using copy and paste, there's quite a lot of options. So if we right click and go copy and then paste, we've got 6 different options here, and that's what I've just sent you in that spreadsheet. So if we go through them, a simple copy and paste using the first option literally pastes everything, including any formulas or formatting. If we copy, let's just take a number. If we copy that, we'll get one with formulas in it. That one's got formulas in it. So if we copy that 46 and we paste values, it pastes 46, just the value 46 and not the formula. So there won't be any linking taken with that. That can be useful sometimes if you're likely to lose your links. However, if we copy and paste formulas, you'll notice this time it's copied the formula as well as the value. So you retain the formula. Let's choose another one. If we copy and transpose, it changes rows to columns and columns to rows. So that was in a row, it's now in a column. We can also copy and paste formatting, and that just copies the formatting and none of the other information. And there's a few more in there. You can paste the link, and that would just give you a link to that cell. Any questions from that? No? Okay, those paste types I've pasted into the chat window if you want to download them now or later and just have a play around with those. You may find them quite interesting. So sorting, not so many of you were in the survey, not so many of you were that confident with sorting and the pitfalls and filtering. If we do sorting first, we'll come back to filtering. Now, when you're sorting, there are some pitfalls. The main one I usually see is if you highlight some of the data and you sort. If you do that, it will only sort the highlighted area and everything else will get jumbled up. So if you're sorting this spreadsheet, for instance, highlight the whole sheet and then use sort. So you can sort A to Z, Z to A, or custom. If you're doing custom sorts, you can sort, say, by last name, and then add a level, then sort by first name, add a level, then sort by job title, say, and it rearranges the whole set of data. So if you didn't highlight that, it would only sort what you'd highlighted. The other pitfall would be if you got a row that's got no data in it and you hadn't highlighted everything. If you just go to sort now, it will only sort up to where the gap is. It's another thing to look out for. Any questions on this? No? Okay, if we nip back to filtering, filtering can be quite interesting. Let me just turn the filters off. Right, if you've just got some data, like you can see on the screen now, we can filter that as long as there's no gaps again in there, no blank rows or anything. We can go into the data tab and click on filter, and it gives you these down arrows in the headers and then a lot of options. So you can select all, or you can turn it off and say, let's see how many Bournes and De Silvas and Delaney's there are. And that's one kind of filtering. You can see that it's changed to say that it's filtering. You could go further and do a filter on a second column. So let's select all again and put all the data back. There are other types of filter. You can filter by colour. We can either get all the cells with the yellow colour in it or no fill at all. So if I click on that, it shows me just the cells with the colour yellow in. Equally, I could have gone for no fill. And then it would give me all the cells without the colour in, just the opposite. In the sort and filter group at the top, you've got an advanced button. What you can do with that is sort for unique records only. So if you've got someone who can appear twice in this list, we could click on that and it'll show me unique records only. Can be handy. Any questions on filtering? No, thank you. So we've done sorting. So let's have a look at tables. I think tables is one of the most useful things in Excel. It's so handy, especially if you use a table rather than a range. You may have used ranges and you name a range. The trouble is, if you delete anything or add anything, you have to go and redefine that range. If you create a table, when you add or delete any records, that table expands and contracts on its own, which is really, really useful. So the easiest way to create a table, again, make sure you've got no blank rows. Use Control T. When you do that, it'll say create table. It'll highlight it and it'll tell you the range. If you've got headers, and you should really have headers, make sure there's a tick in My Table Has Headers. And then you'll see that there's arrows like for filtering at the top, like you had before when we were doing filtering. But we're in table design now on the ribbon. The name of the table is table 2. We could give it a distinctive name, say staff list. Sorry, you can't have a gap. So when you're doing formulas, you can actually refer to the table name instead of the range. Other things we can do in the design here, we can change the colours. You can tell it's got a header row, we can have banded columns, all sorts of things you can do. Another thing you can do is use a total row. So that's just adding up the number of columns with rows we've got, sorry. If there were values in there, it'll get the values as well. Also, when you've got a table, you can use a feature called Form. Now you can add this to the quick access toolbar, which is at the top. You usually use that for saving and printing. If you customize this, you can add form to it, which is this button here. I've also added it to the ribbon over here. If I click on form, oops, sorry, wrong one, that was print. That table can now be added to and edited and deleted just by using this form. So if I click new, I can add myself to this table. Click new. and you see it's added me at the bottom of that table. Could be an easier way of inputting your data into a table. Any questions on tables? Many people use tables at all? You can type your answer or turn your microphone on to reply if you like. Lindsay never used tables. Good. Maybe this will be useful for you. Diane uses a lot of pivots. I'm not covering pivots today. We could do that in a future session. Pivots do use tables, or you should use tables within pivots. I use them a lot as well for data dashboards. So if your data's in a table and you've pulled it out of an MIS system somewhere, for instance, you could drop the same data in from the MIS system every week or however often you want to update it and refresh the pivot table. As long as you've called your data the same table name, it will refresh it. It's really, really useful. Again, we can come back to that in another session if you find that sort of analysis useful. Okay, next topic. Functions. Not so much confidence on functions, that's surprising. So I'll just look at basic functions at the moment, or formulas. So here's an example of data, a lot of numbers in it. We've got a blank row in there. So we'll do the basic one. We'll stay on the home button for now. And let's say add up this column. No, we'll add up the first column. So if you go to auto sum, you've got a number of options here: sum, average, count, min, and max, which are probably the most useful functions for beginners anyway. If we click on it, it highlights the range. Now you see what happens when we've got a blank row. It hasn't guessed that there's any data above that for January. It's missed out row 6, but by doing that, it's missed out from row 2. So what you can do is just drag that up and then press enter, and now that's added up from row 2 to row 13. So the formula is sum B2 colon B13 in brackets. You could do equals B2 plus B3 plus B4 plus B5, but it's easier to put the range in. Now, if we wanted to add up February to December as well, we don't have to go and do that in every column. You can get this handle at the bottom right and just drag it all the way across, let go, and it's updated to add each column. Could be quite handy. So let's call that totals, maybe make it bold. Another useful feature when you're doing functions, if you're not quite sure how the function works, you can click this FX button, insert function. See, we've got sum in there. Click OK, and it tells you to put the range in that box, and then it will insert it for you. As I say, FX, you can search for a function if you're not quite sure how it works. So if you were doing something like VLOOKUP, again, we're not doing VLOOKUPs today, but we can do it in a future session. You can click Go, VLOOKUP, and it'll tell you to put your lookup value in, the array, the index, true, false, etc. So it kind of holds your hands through any functions you're not really sure about. Another one you might use is if. Again, we're not covering if today because it could take all the session to do ifs. Search for if. And again, that's a logical test. If this test is met, do this. If it's not, do that. Any questions on functions? We say we can do a whole session on functions, really. Anybody? No. Okay, so concatenate. Has anybody used concatenate? This is a really useful function. And a lot of no's, nevers, no. When you bring data into a spreadsheet from whatever source, say you've got first names and last names and you want to join them together, you might want to split them even, whichever way around you want to do it. Let me just get back to it. So in here we've got a column of last names, a column of first names, and let's create a new column title. Let's call it name. Say we want surname, comma, space, forename in one column. So if we use concatenate, we can use that insert function button to do it, or we can type it in. Starts with an equals, type concatenate, open bracket, then click on last name. It puts the cell reference in for us. Then we want it to show a comma. Then we insert quotation marks. We want a space as well there, I think. Close quotation mark, comma, and then we want to put the first name, and then we close the bracket. And then I've done it wrong. What have I done wrong? Probably spelt it wrong. Try again. There we go. Concatenate. Oops. Surname. Forename. There you go. Of course, you could copy that down or drag the handle so it goes into every cell. There's another way of doing it. If you prefer, you can use equals, cell reference, and use the ampersand. And we'll have the space in the quotation marks. And then the ampersand again. No. That never works when you tried it. That should work. Yeah, there you go. The one I really like, and not many people know about this, it's a pretty new function, but it will have to be in the row next to the data. If I type the surname, comma, and the forename, and then go to the next row and start typing the same, you'll notice grayed out data appears below. That is flash fill, and it does that automatically. If I press enter, it flash fills all the way down. So instead of using concatenate, you could just use flash fill instead. Anybody think that'll be useful using flash fill? Yeah, you knew about it already? Some of you did, some of you didn't. Good, that's another useful tip anyway. Okay, if you're happy with that, we'll move on to duplicate. So you may have brought your data in from another data source again, and you might have duplicates in there that you don't want. So to get rid of the duplicates, let's go to data, click on remove duplicates. It will highlight all the cells, make sure you've got no rows with no data in. Let's unselect all, and we want to remove duplicates. This is probably not a good idea. If it was people, we may have a student number or a payroll number, and we can cut it down to just data with no duplicates. So what can we take out of this? Let's take out school. If there's any duplicates, say OK. 136 duplicate values found, and it's cut it down to 80 unique values. So that could be handy. Just undo that. Another thing we can do with duplicates, if we go back to the home button, conditional formatting. I think you mentioned conditional formatting earlier, Diane. Again, we could do a whole session on this, but one of the most useful things is if you go to highlight cell rules, and at the bottom it says duplicate values, and it defaults to fill light red, dark red text. So if we want duplicate values in, say, which cell's got duplicate values in? That one. So we could go conditional formatting, duplicate values, OK. All those are duplicate values. But if you had two lots of data from two tables, it would pick out your duplicate values quite well. I use that quite a lot actually when I'm pulling information from the MIS system. Any questions on duplicates? Nope. Page layouts. If we go to page layout, you'll find there's lots and lots of options to change the layout. Don't forget that some of these groups, like page setup, can be expanded to get even more options. So in page setup, probably the orientation is the one you might use the most. You change the page layout from portrait to landscape. Paper size is usually A4 by default, but you could change it to A3 if you're printing on bigger paper. You can set print areas, page breaks. You can also scale things to fit. And if we go to File, Print, you'll notice that that would print without any grid lines. So one of the most useful things in page setup is to go in here and go to Sheet and click Grid Lines. Now if we go to Print Preview, It's got grid lines on it. Let's go back in there again. If we've got a lot of data, we can make it fit to one page. There might be too much for it to be on one page. If it goes down like 500 rows, if we leave one page wide and take that number out there in the tall, it would then print as many pages as it needed, but only one page wide. I don't think we've got that much data in here. Here we have, we've got 2 pages. Now we see we've got 2 pages there, but we've lost the headers. So if we go back in here, in sheet, rows at top, we could click row 4. OK, let's go to print preview. And what happens to the second sheet? It's got the headers in it now. It's repeated the headers, which is what we want. Any more questions on this from anybody? Anything you want me to go over? Diane, conditional formatting. Yeah, we will do another session on that, Diane. As I say, there's so much in conditional formatting, I could make it last a whole session. Right, formatting. This data looks a bit messy at the moment. So, go to the home key, home menu. We've got fonts and we've got alignment. First thing I'm going to do, I'll highlight the whole sheet with this top left cell here. If I double click in between A and B, it will resize to the maximum width of the data in each column. Same can happen with rows. You can actually make it wrap text as well. That's quite a handy one if you want to use that. If you get a lot of text in here, then wrap at that width. So fonts, let's change the top row. Again, we can open it. We can change the font type, the style, the size, the color, anything we want to do really. Let's make it bold. Let's make it 12. Okay, we can change that again. And we can change alignment. Again, we can open this. So we can change the orientation. So we can have the text that way around if we wanted. Another thing you can do is merge cells. So merge and center. Okay, that doesn't make sense, but might do if we put name in there. And you can also unmerge in the same place. Can be handy. Any questions on that? So let's just have a look at the quick access toolbar. If you want to add, I've got quite a lot on here. It doesn't default to this many. You've usually just got print and save. If you go to more commands, and you can change to all commands, these are the ones in the right hand side that I've got on mine. That form one for tables I've added, but you can literally choose from all of these. So if you use anything a lot, put it on your quick access toolbar and it'll be a lot easier to get to in the future. Right, shall we just have a quick look at graphs? Let's find some data that we can use for graphs. Right, just a quick mention of graphs because we haven't got much time. There, that's all the same data, isn't it? You've got anything that's different? Let's delete all that. Right, highlight that data. We can make a graph from this. I can find graphs. Insert. Recommended charts. We've got lots of graphs here. So we can insert a chart just by doing that, and then it gives us all these chart styles so we can make it look different. But we can always use these buttons here to change the axes and titles, chart styles, and even what it shows. Again, I could do a whole session on graphs. But if we click on the graph, you can change the chart type. So what if you want it to be a pie, bar, area, column, whatever you want. Any questions? Right, I'll just see what you all said about Moss. There's a lot of training available through the Microsoft Office Specialist program. If you work for Giphy, those are free to you through Innovate. I think only a couple of you know about it. It's something you can contact Innovate about. And they're Microsoft recognized examinations, and you can do them in Excel. There's a specialist level and there's an expert level. So if you're interested in that, get in touch with Innovate. Also, did we have any Microsoft Innovative Educators? About half of you. Again, that's a free program from Microsoft. Let me just find you the link for that. Here it is. I'll put it in chat. That takes you to the Microsoft Innovative Educator website. You can sign up to do the MIE exercise or course. That then opens up a lot of courses that you can go into on a lot of Microsoft products. I use it an awful lot. A lot of the new 365 apps, for instance, that come out in there, there's lots of information on how to join those, but every time you do something, you get a badge. And once a year, you could be applying to be an innovative expert. It's a little bit more work, a couple of hours, you've got to submit a SWAY. But then that opens you up to communicating with a lot of other people doing similar jobs in education. So one more thing, if you wouldn't mind, if you signed up to that already, or if you want to sign up to it, let me just give you a code, because you can claim accreditation for attending this session with me today. And again, in the chat, I've just posted the code in there. If you paste that into the Microsoft Innovative Educator site, it will give you, I think it'll give you a badge for that, or it'll give you some sort of accreditation. So we've got a few minutes left before somebody else wants to use this room. Has anybody got any questions at all? Anything you want me to go back over, or anything you want me to offer in the future? Just type in the chat or turn your microphone on. Anything at all? I've covered just about everything I had on my list today. There will be a survey at the end of the day. I think Elaine's going to send it out to everybody to give feedback on all the sessions you're attending today. Yes, you will be able to use the code. The recording will actually be in today's EdTech community. The code is for the MIE community, which is something else. Thanks, Michelle. Okay, this session, the recording will go into the on-demand channel in the community where you joined today, so you'll be able to watch it back at a later date. And if you think of anything you want covering in future sessions, just let Innovate know and something will be arranged. Yeah, unfortunately, we're not on site. If we were in a classroom, we could all be actually doing practical work on this. Someone just said they want to do that. But again, if you work for the Tech Partnership, if you join the MOS program, you could go and do that because you do get to practice it. They use Geometrics, which does a lot of simulations for you sit an exam. Or if you just want to learn a bit more, go to the MIE website, sign up for that if you haven't already, and have a look through there. There's lots of training courses on there that do give you badges and really, really useful for all the Office 365 products. Thanks, Diane. Okay. If we wind that up now and give you a chance to have a few minutes before you nip off to whatever session you're attending next. Thanks for attending today.